Thank you for joining us this evening for this event in celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. My name is Jason Romain, and I am Dallas County's Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. Before we dive into the panel discussion, I wanted us to consider some of the history behind Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So back in 1968, inspired by the Black Power movement, the American Indian movement, and anti-war efforts, two remarkable activists, Emma Gee and Yuji Ichioka, coined the term Asian American to help forge a powerful protest bloc. This term not only countered derogatory language, but also brought visibility to Asian American activists, enhancing their political influence. It united numerous Asian American subgroups, recognizing the common challenges they faced, such as immigration issues, anti-Asian violence, and harmful stereotypes. Together, they paved the way for a shared fight for social equity. And now the month-long celebration of the Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month has its roots in several events that took place in the 1970s. In 1977, representatives from Asian American and Pacific Islander communities visited the White House to present a petition requesting that Congress proclaim the first 10 days of May as Asian and Pacific Heritage Week. These 10 days were chosen to coincide with two significant anniversaries: the arrival of the first Japanese immigrants to the United States on May 7, 1843, and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10th of 1869, which was largely built by Chinese workers. In 1978, President Jimmy Carter officially enacted a joint resolution establishing this annual celebration, and the inaugural commemoration occurred in May of 1979. Years later, in 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed into law a bill that expanded the observance from a week to a month, officially designating May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The term has since been expanded to include Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander populations, represented by various terms like APA, AAPI, and AANHPI. This inclusive approach was motivated by the desire to amplify the voices of smaller communities that risk being overlooked in key decision-making processes, including the U.S. Census. While this unity fosters empowerment and solidarity, it is important to acknowledge the unique needs and challenges faced by different subpopulations within this diverse tapestry. Fast forward to today, Asian Americans encompass around 50 ethnic groups speaking more than 100 languages. They represent the fastest growing racial group in the United States, constituting approximately 7% of our nation's population. The Pew Research Center projects a significant increase, estimating that Asian American population will reach 46 million by the middle of the century, making Asians the largest immigrant group in the country. Zooming in on Dallas County, we see that according to the 2020 census, Dallas County holds the 8th largest percentage of Asian American residents in the state of Texas, with 7% of our population identifying as such. And over the past decade, the Asian American population in Dallas County experienced a remarkable 9% growth, highlighting the flourishing diversity within our community. When we explore the cities within the Dallas County, we encounter a vibrant Asian American population. And you can see that in this map here. All the areas in blue are areas that have a larger Asian American, where Asian languages are spoken. For instance, right there in the north in Capel, they have 30.3% of their population is Asian American, followed by Irving, Sunnyvale, Saatchi, and Carrollton with more than 15% of their population self-identifying as Asian American. Richardson, Garland, Cedar Park, Addison, and Farmer Branch also boast thriving Asian American communities. So in the population in the city of Dallas is 3.5, but even that, it might seem like a small percentage, but that is 45,653 people that self-identify as Asian American here in the city, which is actually larger than the entire city of Capel, the entire population there. So here in the city of Dallas, you'll hear a symphony of languages, Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, echoing alongside the most commonly spoken English and Spanish. Now let's take a moment also to recognize the Native American and other Pacific Islander residents in the county. While comprising a smaller population, percentage-wise is 0.1% of the population, they hold a special place in our diverse community. Cedar Hill takes the lead with an admirable 0.2% representation, while other cities like Carrollton, Capel, DeSoto, Richardson also embrace these vibrant cultures with similar yet small-knit communities. And shifting our focus to our own workforce here in Dallas County, we find an inspiring representation of Asian Americans. Out of our dedicated employees, 212, or 3.28% of our employee population probably self-identify as Asian American. Now let's acknowledge the departments that champion diversity within our county. The IT department takes the lead with an impressive 20.63% of their population, and then followed by the Department of Health and Human Services with 11.46%. Then the Facilities Department, District Attorney's Office, and Sheriff's Department also contribute significantly. And let's not forget the one exceptional individual who self-identifies as Pacific Islander or Native Hawaiian, bringing their unique workforce, or their unique perspective to our workforce. So we have one employee in the entire county that self-identifies as Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. Hey, and I don't know if she's here today, but. And today, as we celebrate Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander heritage, let us honor and appreciate the vibrant cultures, the diverse languages, and the contribution these communities bring to the fabric of Dallas County. Together, let's continue to promote equality, inclusion, and understanding within our remarkable community. Thank you for joining us for what will surely be an insightful panel conversation. And thank you to our distinguished panelists who agreed to share their thoughts and unique perspectives with us today. And with that, I will turn over the mic to Sandra Kong, who will moderate the conversation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jason, for that wonderful introduction and history of AANHPI Heritage Month. As Jason mentioned, my name is Sandra Kong. I am the Special Assistant to Dr. Philip Huang, the Director of DCHHS. I grew up in Dallas and went to high school here, and I'm currently a medical student at Johns Hopkins, so it's been a wonderful opportunity to come back here and re-engage with Dallas community. I'm of Chinese Burmese heritage, and it's something that I've really grown into more so on later in my young adulthood. And I'm really excited to hear from all the panelists today about how their own experiences have shaped their roles in the workforce. So maybe we can start from right to left with Judge Tina Clinton. If you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, your role within Dallas County, and what you identify as in terms of race and or ethnicity.
안녕하세요. 내 이름은 Tina Clinton입니다. Hello, my name is Tina Clinton. I identify as Korean American. I am an immigrant. I was born in South Korea, did not make it to the United States until approximately, I believe, 4.5 years old, and so therefore English is my second language. I grew up, we moved to Dallas about 1979. So most of my formative years were here in Texas, even though early on when we immigrated, we were in the Northeast. And it was an interesting time to grow up because at that point in time, even in the Northeast, there was no such class as English as a second language. So the learning that I did, the efforts that I have to thank are those of my elementary school teachers who painstakingly, while other children were out in recess, kept me in the classroom and inch by inch taught me this is a door, this is a floor, this is a chair. And it's due to their efforts and it's due to their diligence that I can say that my education was what it was. It's the efforts of others. And so as I moved here to Texas, went to Duncanville High School, went to UT Austin for undergraduate, and then went to SMU Law School. I was able to join the DA's office as a young prosecutor. Went into defense work after that, became a municipal court judge by appointment, became an elected official in 2010, starting with the Court of criminal court number 8, which is a misdemeanor court, and now I sit in criminal district court number 1, which is a district felony court. And currently I'm in a campaign race for the 5th District Court of Appeals, which is a 6-county race. If I'm able to do that, I would be the first Asian American to ever sit in the Court of Appeals, an intermediary court that covers Dallas in its 135-year history. There has never been a male or female, an Asian American on that court. In fact, in criminal district court number 1, the court that I sit in now, I'm the first person of color of any race, much less an Asian American, and it's 125 years when I took the bench. So in its 125th year history, that broke that ceiling. So I say that to let you know kind of the scope of the history that we have here in Dallas County, the historical marks that we have made in these seats and what we do, and what I'm hoping for is that Dallas County and the representation of APIs will grow, because we have amazing representation here on this dais, but there is so much more room for Asian Americans to come to the table and seat of public service. And that is an area that I think that we have much growth potential. And I also would be remiss not to thank Dr. Elba Garcia, Commissioner, who is in the audience, because she has always been not only an amazing ally, but an amazing leader who makes it possible for all of us, regardless of what our ethnicity is or race is, to work together for the betterment of our communities.
Thank you so much, Judge Tina Clinton. We'll move on to Dr. Philip Huang.
Hi. Let's see. In terms of how I identify myself, and so I'm Phil Huang. I'm the Director of Dallas County Health and Human Services. My mother was Japanese, but was born in Seattle, then went back to Japan during the war, actually, and then came over here. She was supposed to be only here for 6 months to maintain her U.S. citizenship, and wound up getting married and staying here for the rest of her life, and never thought she'd be in Texas. My father was born in Taiwan, and when he describes the opportunities that he had, I mean, it was in what would be a developing country, or walking bare feet in these village sort of situations and things, but had educational opportunities. I was able to go to graduate school here in the United States, and then married my mom. And so I was actually born in New York City, but, as they say, got to Texas as fast as you could. My parents moved to Dallas in the 60s. My dad got a job with Atlantic Richfield, which was a big thing. And when he came to Dallas, so they did not know what to do with him. This was in a very, we look at the history, the racial history here, and this Asian, I mean, he says his boss didn't know, and this is when, as we've got the fountain downstairs, whites and blacks, and they didn't know what to do with him. And when there was not the diversity here in Dallas when I was young. I mean, it's changed so much over the years, certainly. I started out my first 4 years in Green Hill, and I've gone back to, I look at my yearbook from, I was the only non-white person in the entire yearbook. And they actually had me come back and talk a little oral history to look at some of that. But I mean, now it's quite diverse. But at that point, again, and I didn't realize, and they asked, what did you think about it? And, I was just a little kid, so I was sort of oblivious. And at that point, there's not as much, I guess, necessarily. I mean, I knew how kids are, and there is the tease, or the sort of making fun of Asian type of things that happened. Where I grew up was actually right over, it's in the Stoltz Road area, which is right by Hamilton Park. And so my middle school, I went to Forest Meadow Junior High, was half African American. And it was just like a natural thing for us. And then looking back on the history, I didn't realize that there was that much turmoil and other things that were going on with some of those things, but we just went through it. So, but when the Richardson Chinatown was starting to come up, but there was no other, again, there were very few Asians when I was initially growing up, and I wound up graduating from Lake Highlands here, went to Rice afterwards in engineering, and then came back to med school here at UT Southwestern. But to see the change, to go to K-Town out in Carrollton, I mean, it's just incredible. The diversity that is here, and it's such a, it's so amazing to see how Dallas has changed. And it's, and I came from Austin for many years before coming back to Dallas, and Dallas is so much more diverse than some of these other areas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Huang. We'll move on to Allie Yoon.
Hello, my name is Allie Yoon, and I work as a professional development and trainer for pretrial services for Dallas County. Ethnically, I'm Korean American, so both of my parents are Korean. I was born in Korea, but pretty much after a year of me being born and living there, my father, he had majored in Japanese language in Korean University, and so he obtained a job in Japan. So we all packed our bags and we soon moved to Japan, and most of my childhood comes from living in Tokyo. I lived there for about 10 years, and then after that we ended up moving back to Korea for about a year or two before we moved here in Texas. I had to restart 6th grade when I came to Texas, and by the time I came, we had an ESL class, and so I went through ESL, and I still remember my teacher, Miss White. She was detrimental in making my experience at school just more easy. She would put me aside from class and not only teach me about the American culture, but she made sure to introduce me to other diverse cultures that surround Texas. Now, I started going to school in Rockwall. And Rockwall, if you don't know, it's a very heavily white area. And so I was probably in my high school, the graduating class was about 400. I was maybe one of 15 Asians in my class. There weren't many of us. So I mainly ended up hanging out with other minority groups, and I was just kind of the token Asian hanging out with other groups. And so my experience has been pretty tough. Even though I was age of 12 moving here, it was still a big adjustment for me. And, they say, it's so much easier for kids to adjust to their surroundings. Well, at the age of 12, I still struggled a lot. The first 2 years of me moving here, how kids are, they make fun of you and ask silly questions. I was intimidated to speak, and I didn't speak for the longest time. I only had very select few that I felt really comfortable in school that I would openly talk to. Other kids would hardly ever see me speak. And so after about a couple of years, I felt more comfortable and I started, adjusting better to those around me. But it was definitely a struggle, but looking back, I think it's definitely one of the hardships that I went through and learned a lot from. And now I'm very proud to be working for Dallas County. I got a master's in social work through UT Arlington, and I'm really glad to be sitting here today.
Thank you so much for sharing and joining us today, Allie. We'll move on to Wesley Liu.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wesley Liu. My Chinese name, which is actually on my plaque up here too, is Liu Weizhen. So my parents were immigrants from Taiwan, and I am a first-generation Chinese American. And it's always very interesting to hear everyone's story because, like Dr. Huang, our youths were very parallel to each other, even though we, many years apart. I was born in Dallas, and I grew up in Richardson. And one of my starkest memories from elementary school, I think it was around 2nd grade. I was one of the only Asian Americans in my class, and then we had a foreign student come in. He was Korean, but the teacher didn't know it at the time, right? So the teacher just saw that I was Asian American and he was Asian American, and asked me to speak to him. And so it was very interesting because I would be speaking Mandarin Chinese to someone who was Korean, and both of us knew that we didn't speak the same language. But everyone in the class was like in awe, thinking that we knew what we were talking about when we did it. And so it's just interesting to see the growth that has happened since then, and the educational awareness with Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander heritage. And I graduated from the rival from Dr. Huang High School. I went to Berkner High School. And then I got my Bachelor of Science in Economics from UTA in Arlington. And then I got my Master's in Public Administration and Policy from American University in DC. And that was last December. And I've been with Dallas County for 3 years now, going on 4. I started in the county clerk's office. Then I was administrative assistant to the district clerk, and then business analyst. And now in my current role as budget and policy analyst in the budget office. And so, you know, it's wonderful to see all the representation up here in the panel as well as in Dallas County, because it's definitely come a long way, I think.
Thanks, Wesley, and very funny to hear the parallels you have with Dr. Huang's story. We'll move on to Sandeep Kathuria.
Thank you, Sonia. First off, I'd like to thank Sonia and Jason for making me part of this. I'm honored to be part of this esteemed group of panelists and this group here, so thank you. I do have a question for you right off the bat. What do you guys think of a man wearing a turban on his head sitting in front of you? Take a second. I've been called good, bad, ugly things, so I wouldn't be offended if you have bad things for me. I've been called a raghead, terrorist, Osama, name it. I've gotten death threats just because the way I look. You may not realize this, but these are some unique struggles and challenges that I face. Oh, by the way, I'm a Sikh. I'm not Taliban. For those who don't know Sikh, it's a very young religion that was born in north of India, 1469. What I wear on my head is called turban. It's not a hat. It symbolizes honor, compassion, and respect. By no way I'm a terrorist. This should not define me a terrorist. But these are some of the challenges. I bring this upon you because I don't know what you guys were thinking in the last few seconds that you paused for, but I want you to go back and relate to this, some of the challenges we all face. So, my name is Sandeep Kathuria. I've been a project manager with the Dallas County Facilities Engineering and Project Management team for the last 7 years, and have worked on, I managed several initiatives for Dallas County, transforming Dallas County buildings. Actually, just yesterday, one of my projects, we had a groundbreaking, the new Mesquite Government Center. It's a pleasure to be part of this huge thing. We are, thank you for all the support, Commissioner's Court. You know, it's a great, for me, it's just to be part of this process. I've been working on this for so long. It's just, it's a great feeling for me. I grew up in India. I did my bachelor's in architecture. Then I moved to US with $100 in my pocket. Like everyone else, we Asian Americans, we work hard. Education is key. I really worked hard, nights and days, and did my master's in business technology from George Washington University. I'm a licensed architect. I've worked on several landmark projects, both on East Coast, West Coast, and 3 countries. I have designed airports. I'm a former airport designer. It's one of my things that I call as a feather for me. My family always cherished public service. They gave back to the community all the time. And so after working a very long, gratifying design career in private sector, I decided to join Dallas County. And this is my way, my professional way of giving back to the community. I also serve as the Planning and Zoning Commissioner for City of Allen. Yes, City of Allen. That was in the news recently. I was less than a mile away from it and was at the same spot the night before. It's unfortunate, but all these things are related. These are the struggles we all go through. And sometimes events like this ask us to reflect and think back how we can improve. And these kind of situations, these discussions help us and make us strong. I think this is a very, it's a very important event that shapes all our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep, for such candor and providing your story. That will definitely delve into these struggles we all face as Asian Americans, despite our very heterogeneous backgrounds. Lastly, we'll end with Olive.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Olive Chui. I'm married. I have 2 grown children, and my children, they're first generation Asian American. So for my experience with that, as Asian American, they are different from what my children feel about because they're different history and that. So I've been working as a nurse since 1986. And I born in Hong Kong, and I came over to the United States in 1990. And I moved to Dallas. Actually, I immigrated to Ohio because my husband is in Ohio. And we moved to Dallas in 2008 because my husband had a relocation, there's a change of his job. And then I've been working in Dallas County Health and Human Services, the TB Elimination Clinic, since 2008. For me, I always work as a nurse. I always working and been nonstop. And for me, for a challenge to come to United States is English is my second language. Although I'm a nurse in Hong Kong, but I'm fortunate my language, everything in my tuition, they're in English, so I have an advantage. But for somebody who's not speaking English every day, it's a totally different story. You can read perfectly on a book. You can read as fast as any American people, but you don't communicate as the same way as other people. And they may not understand what you're talking about, especially when I start coming here. But I'm very fortunate that when I arrived in Ohio, I start working in a state hospital. Although it's a small hospital, I have very good a coaching nurse. And she just treats me as a whole person. I can tell she doesn't look at me by my colors or anything, or my accents or where I come from. She treats me as a whole person. And then I'm so thankful for that. And I still the memory of about the first day I had to take a report from my emergency room, and she pat on my shoulder. Don't worry. If you don't understand or you don't feel comfortable, just turn the phone back to me. I'll back you up. And that's feel me so comfortable, and I'm always remember. I'm always cherish those moments and my experience with the nurse and all the people around me. But if you talk about do I have any issue? Yes, I do. Those very minor. And for me, I don't consider it's because they discriminate me or because of my colors and so I'm thankful. So how I identify my race is it's just how I look. For me, look at is just my color or my facial feature. For me, it doesn't mean anything to me. When I look at a person right now, for me, they all look the same to me. And ethnicity, it just share how we share the culture. For me, it's all the people in the panel deal with in the same ethnicity. And we should be, how to say it, but we are proud of our ethnicity here. And for me, able to do public work and serve Dallas County citizen or USS citizen, I feel very proud of myself because I feel like no matter where you go, as long as you're able to serve those people, no matter what the colors, where the ethnicity is, the way we are. And so for me, I'm okay with Dallas County, and we're happy we work with Dallas County. I have opportunity to work here for 15 years. I'll be continue work here, Dr. Wong.
Thank you so much to all the panelists for opening up and sharing your stories and feeling very inspired too about all the different struggles that we had to overcome to get to these very accomplished positions we have right now in the workforce. And that kind of leads into the first question I have, in that we've covered that there are a lot of struggles that Asian Americans, especially first, second-gen immigrants, face when integrating into America and assimilating. Yet there's this stereotype known as the model minority, where Asian Americans are seen as smarter, more hardworking, more tech-savvy, more successful than other minority groups. A very, maybe to some, positive stereotype. But this myth can cause a lot of microaggressions and oftentimes leave Asian Americans out of the discrimination discussions in the workplace and kind of overshadow all of the trials and tribulations that you had to face in getting to the roles where you are today. So I wanted to open the floor to the panelists about any thoughts you have about this model minority myth, and has this impacted any personal or work experience if you've had? And we'll allow this discussion ebb and flow, so feel free, anyone, to speak to answer this question.
So I have to leave, so I have to apologize first. But I did want to answer this because I think that the myth of a model minority is a harmful one. I think that people want to say, yeah, but the stereotype is that you're smarter or that you're hardworking. But I don't think that someone is smarter or hardworking because of their race or ethnicity. Mm-hmm. I think that is something that you've learned. I think that it's something that you put forth. I think every individual is capable of that, regardless of your race, color, or ethnicity. And so I think what the model minority idea is about is dividing, mm-hmm. right? It's intended to divide people. It's not intended to put us on a pedestal. Right? And the other part is this: if you're smarter, then what about that child who is having difficulty? And it's because every child has difficulty, right? It doesn't matter what area they have difficulties in. There's not a child that I've met that's perfect yet, starting with my son. So every child has some area that they need help in. When you put that child based on a color or race or ethnicity on a model minority, then that child doesn't get the attention, or they're deemed as even more imperfect when they're just a child, right? When you grow up, it's exactly the same. Dr. Huang and I may both be smart in some way, but I bet, I'm going to assume that you're going to follow me on this, that we're dumb in certain ways too, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has that. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and it's no different. And so model minority, those words are words that I always fight back, because I tend to think that the concept itself is harmful, that the concept itself is not one that is inclusive in any way. Every group can be model. And when it's not, then we need to look at root causes. Why not, right? Not at a group of race, but at that individual and how we help. Mm-hmm. And so, so that's my thought about that.
And I want to add to this, this whole concept, I think it's oversimplified and flawed in itself. There's it's a big, broad spectrum. We have a different ethnic diversity in this group. So you cannot generalize within the group that, the entire, everyone is smart or whatever that, what you're trying to say. But every unique group has its own sets of challenges and uniqueness, which we all want to work through.
Yeah, I agree too, because not only does it put pressure on outside, but also puts pressure, I think, within a AANHPI group in general too. I wasn't a perfect straight A student growing up. I made B's, I made C's, I failed classes. But at the same time, my peers around me growing up, I know would, for instance, copy all my answers on my homework, or in fact, a couple of times they've actually taken my homework erase my name, put their name on top, thinking that they would get an A. So I mean, growing up, I think we all had to contend somewhat with the myth of model minority, even though among ourselves we're all very different. We're all different people, and so it just kind of generalizes us and puts pressure within the community itself too, when they shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just add, just as there's such diversity on this panel, there's really so much diversity within the Asian American community. And from a socioeconomic standpoint, education, I mean, it goes the full spectrum. And then to think then the Asian community does not need as much support or things, again, there are just as much, of the population that are having a lot of other needs. And so.
Yes, I agree. And this myth just dismissed some struggles, a lot of struggle there's Asians America. And we do have a lot of disparity within among our ethnic group. And people now, they feel like they don't need the need, but it's not true. It's not true. It's among, no matter what ethnic group you are, your majority, your minority, there's inside there a lot of disparity among ourselves. And as a mom, and people blame on Tiger Mom, for me, it's not true. It should bring on this myth. Because my kids, they're first generation Asian American generation. And I can see for them, this myth bothered them more than my generation. Why? Because my history. I immigrant to United States. Okay, I don't see, for me, it doesn't influence as much as probably Wesley will agree with me when I talk about. Maybe he feel more. Yeah. And so Tiger Mom is not a problem. Okay, it's just myth that's the problem. That's how I feel like.
I agree.
I think where the model part of this myth may come from is, so Asian Americans, more than half of Asian Americans in the U.S. are actually born outside of the U.S. That's a large proportion of a race group that are immigrants. So when people move to the U.S., whether they were refugees or whether they came for better job opportunities, when they have a purpose and a goal in mind when they come here, they feel desperate to fit into the society. They feel desperate to assimilate to the Western culture. So we try really hard to fit in. Maybe at some point we even try to conform to the stereotype. Oh, they think we're hard workers. They think we're very educated. Okay, let's do that. Let's work hard to show them that is true. So I think the myth comes from us trying hard to be a model, like trying to be a good American, to be a good example of achieving the American dream. But really, what this myth is doing is being used to, like Judge Clinton said, to divide people. Because Asian American, it's a very large group. We have, 50 countries that's considered Asian countries. That's a lot of groups that we're covering, and it doesn't capture the whole picture. Some, Eastern and South Asians, they tend to do better than, Pacific Islanders education-wise and financially. And so it's clumping us into one ball when there are so many different parts to that. So this myth, I think, is very toxic, and it definitely puts divide to the actual problem that exists.
Thank you all for such wise words. And that kind of leads into my next question, in that we covered the history of the term AAPI, AANHPI, and it was created to create unity, but in that comes generalizations that are quite harmful. And so as touched upon, this myth often overshadows the unique disparities of all of the different ethnic groups that are encompassed in this term: South Asian, Southeast Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities. So for example, the median income levels show that Asian American households overall in the US earn more than white households. But when you disaggregate the data and look at specific ethnic groups, you see that the median income ranges by over $70,000 within Asian American subpopulations. That puts many people actually in the poverty levels. So from personal experiences or from work you've done, have you seen other aspects of your community be overshadowed through this aggregation?
So one of the things I've noticed is, growing up in a certain cultural background, it comes with certain things that are misconstrued, misunderstood in this world, so to speak. I grew up in a culture where humility was important. There's things like you have to do everything together. But sometimes that's misconstrued as, a lack of assertiveness or lack of leadership. So we have to just be careful how that comes across. We want to be humble, but we also want to create our own brand. I think that's important to not to oversee or be cocky about what you do, but you have to be able to present and defend, not be shut down just because your culture or your communication style is that way. So I think that has an important role that affects all us Asian Americans here.
Okay, great. And now I want to shift a little bit more to the workplace. And so there's this term called the bamboo ceiling, which is to highlight the mix of individual, cultural, and organizational factors that can hinder the success of Asian Americans in the workplace. And so have you panelists encountered any barriers specifically because of your race or ethnicity? And how have you navigated or tried to break through this bamboo ceiling?
Yeah, this particular question, is really, it's something that I've been through different presentations. And if you go to a lot of, you look at the data and they show, okay, at elementary school and at high school, then sometimes it's whites and Asians that are doing well and are doing better. And then you get to higher levels and, they say this, the myth of the successful Asian. But then I was at one presentation and then they showed pictures of all of the CEOs of the top 10 Fortune 500 companies. And there were 0 Asians. And that really pissed me off, actually. Because I looked at this and there's all this, and everyone's saying, oh, the successful Asians at these levels. But then why are there none at the top levels? And I've, tried to wonder about that. I think some of it has been language. When I look at the immigrants and the history, that language those language barriers are really part of the issue. And I'm seeing more CEOs of the Indian race. And I think because the language in India, many learn it's English, is largely. And that's one initial barrier that I've thought of. But then also, as you were saying, some of the cultural sort of aspects and the way that we get things done. Right. I think there's sometimes this perception that it's non-assertive or trying to be collaborative. Right. But I think that what sometimes is not recognized is that there are ways to get things done in a collaborative way and not from an authoritarian type of administrative manner. And so I think sometimes, again, that's perceived as a weakness. Right. But that's where, I think that as we get more in the subsequent generations that have been in the society that know the social norms, then I think it's going to change. But sort of where I've been, I can see language barriers, cultural barriers, and some of those things have been that bamboo ceiling.
Yeah. Also, I've seen that sometimes the organizations, they perceive stereotypes as non-fits, that they cannot lead the team, or just because, I actually experienced this firsthand in my early career that, we were going after a project. This was in private sector. I wasn't, part of that group who was to present to the clients because people thought that the way someone looked, we may not get the project eventually. So things like that, sometimes there are perceived misfits that, but when I had to prove it, from my work, and it helped me out. But it took a longer time or an additional effort to make that happen. So it's all these things: cultural, communication styles. You talked about, you talked about English in India. There was a show that I recently heard. This guy, the stand-up comedian guy, he goes to India. Is named Gabriel. You should check it out on YouTube. But he talks about he goes to India, and apparently there are more people who speak English than anywhere else. He says combined U.S. and Canada, because of the population. But the point is, it's not just about the language, but how you communicate and how you're perceived. And you're right. A lot of the CEOs of the top companies, Microsoft, you name it, Microsoft, Meta, or Alphabet, they're Indians, but they have been able to break the bamboo ceiling because of their ability, because of their education, because of being able to go through this. But it's not everyone who's been able to do it. We cannot say this whole Asian American group is a monolithic. It's a very diverse group. Mm-hmm. There are different portions to it, different aspects.
Could I add one more comment just about the language piece, because I had not realized, but I was talking to others about that language piece, and that they felt, there are so many engineers or accountants or some at high tech, and I had not realized it, but many of them said because of that language barrier, they felt more comfortable doing those sort of jobs where they didn't have to be speaking and doing that, and that's why many people of the Asians are.
Yeah, in fact, I've been stereotyped. I'm an architect, a building architect. Every time I have to introduce myself, I have to clarify I'm not an IT architect, because I'm stereotyped that I'm from India. I must be a desktop support guy or something similar. So, there are some stereotypes that we have to work through.
Yeah. I think it's also the opportunity. If the majority in a company, they're willing to offer opportunity to our minority group, and you see whether they have to put effort and able to put effort in to let us have opportunity.
Yeah.
And I wish America would be more accepting of diverse leadership style, because I think Asians, which Asian country you come from, you tend to cultivate the type of leadership that works for your country, right? So every leadership style is very different based on the culture. I think the type of leadership that Americans like here are the ones who has the loudest voice in the room, the ones who take up most of the time in meetings, saying their point of views. Whereas where I come from, the leadership style we desire is ones that promote humility and protection. So sometimes when I carry those type of leaderships here, it's not seen as being very assertive. It's seen as being passive. But really, America is a melting pot, right? So in that sense, you should really be bringing different diversity of leadership styles into the workplace so that, people of diverse backgrounds can, work better as a team. So I wish that's something America could get better at, is being willing to accept people from different backgrounds and appreciating their unique leadership style.
Yeah, I think that's what's important, is not only their personal and individual obstacles to overcome to break any kind of barriers, but also having organizations or workplaces that see the value in diversity and encourage the importance of belonging, because I think that's one of the most important pieces to break through any kind of ceiling, whether it's bamboo or glass or anything, is to have the workplace be able to see that kind of change. And I think that's what's fortunate about Dallas County, especially, is having leaders and mentors in all the departments, especially ones I worked in. I can say firsthand, the leaders and mentors who are open-minded, who believe in the belonging that everyone can bring some kind of value to the workplace and have some benefit of being there, and offering all kinds of trainings, classes, and just showcasing that no matter where you come from, no matter who you are, you have the ability and talent to be someone and to contribute to the Dallas County. So I think, that's one of the things, is having workplaces and organizations be a force for change and belonging.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And I just want to, highlight that these kind of characteristics we see of Asian Americans being not as assertive, giving more space for others to talk, being more collaborative. There's a unique intersection with that stereotype with what females face too. And I, like, as an Asian female, I feel like I have like compounded effects in that I'm Asian, I'm seen as like usually not as assertive, more quiet speaking. And I'm also a woman, and they typically have that stereotype placed upon that too. So I just want to give a shout out to the Asian females here and on the panel who have to kind of work through all of these different stereotypes to get to the roles where they are today. And I think Wesley touched upon some factors that make the workplace environment more conducive for a more diverse workforce. And so I wanted to ask the panelists, what have you experienced during your workforce development, professional development, that have allowed you to feel more welcomed and the workforce accepting of your different leadership styles?
I think one of the most important things in my career here was actually the Dallas County Leadership and Management Academy, which is led by our county administration team, Mr. Darrell Martin here. In that, there is a section of the program where we have to take a personal assessment to see what our leadership skills is. And from that, you can see that not everyone has the same leadership skills. Some people lead by being, assertive. Some people lead by being calm demeanor and leading from behind rather than leading from in front, leading from the side. So, I think that's the important thing, is knowing that leadership comes in many different forms, many different ways, and seeing that in different people, and not just seeing what is possibly the normal qualities of leadership.
I think for me, what would make me feel more comfortable being at a workplace would be just actually seeing more diversity in the workplace, people being hired, more people of diverse backgrounds actually being hired. And I think what also would help me be hopeful is seeing a upper management team consist of diverse group of people. And actually, the department I work for, Pretrial, this month, they gave me an opportunity to host different events just within our department that's related to AAPI month. And I got to champion that, and I got to pull along other coworker who's also from Asian American background, and that, like, having a platform even within the workplace to host events like that, to teach my other colleagues what my culture is all about, and seeing them learn and seeing them have fun learning and, taking the lessons home, that's definitely made me feel proud of where I come from, and it's really helped me feel more included in my workplace.
And I would echo just, giving the opportunities and trying to promote the diversity in the leadership. I'm very appreciative to Mr. Martin and Dallas County for giving me the opportunity with this position, because I think the more that we can show that there are different ways of getting things done, that different persons in leadership roles, there are different ways to do that. And so sometimes these preconceptions of how things are, what is a leader, I think that it's, you need to give a lot of different people opportunities.
So I do feel, and I'm going to echo that as well, I do feel that, the minority groups bring a different perspective. And so I think and I'm going to take it upon ourselves as well, it's our duty to be authentic to ourselves and not, you talked about melting pot. We should not just change because the norm is like that, because these are our roots. If we don't preserve it, it's going to get lost. So, it's not about boasting or self-promoting, but just to take care of your roots and be yourself and be confident. You should not be the frog who doesn't know the world beyond, but at least you should be aware of yourselves and your roots. I think that is important as well.
That last advice on leaning into your roots and your identity has been so important for me too, and that I feel like I've been able to better serve in my roles and my leadership roles, because I'm proud to be who I am and my heritage. And so kind of to end the panel, I wanted to ask everyone if you have any advice for young AANHPI professionals starting out in the workforce, especially in how to lean into their identity and make that a part of their professional identity.
So I always say, be yourself, be proud and confident in your culture. Because I know for me growing up, especially being very few in my elementary class until there was more AANHPI individuals in middle school and high school, it was hard. And I did push back on my culture growing up. But now, especially in light of the pandemic that happened, I've grown to embrace my heritage and my culture more and more. And I'm extremely proud to be Asian American, Chinese American specifically, and just, take chances, don't pass up learning opportunities, and always build relationships.
My suggestion for young professionals who look like me would be network. Networking is so important, and when you're networking, try to identify a mentor who not only look like you, you should also have a mentor who don't look like you. Get a mentor who belongs in the majority and, get their help on, being pulled from those type of stereotypes. And you should have someone powerful also be on your team. And so I think it's the balance of, don't lose your identity, embrace who you are, surround people who look like you, but also surround people who don't, and try to, learn from their strengths and move up the ladder.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think our Chinese American culture, we are more conservative. But for the new generation, they're more spoken up, they will speak up, and I think the young generation need to promote themselves. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be shy and you need to promote yourself, but it's not our culture that we're always conservative and, hey, let somebody discover your strength. No, you have to tell them your strength. You have to tell them what you're good at. Yeah.
I'm just going to echo on what she said. I think the key that I mentioned earlier as well is to the young generation, this new generation born after 2010. I think they need to, we have got to learn a lot from them. Trust me. I mean, I'm learning. I'm very close to that generation, but I'm learning a lot. But I think they need to create a brand for themselves so they can market. And I'm going to leave you with one quote. It's very close to me. And hopefully our younger generation can live by it, especially this new generation. It's that truth is high. Truth is high, but higher still is truthful living. I think that's the key we all need to maintain in ourselves.
And I just, to add on, I mean, I agree with what all's been said, but for people the youth to embrace their history, don't forget where they came from and to learn from that. The humility is something to always keep up, and I think it works. It's one of the most important skills in anything to keep that humility. But I'm really encouraged by the next generation. I think there are tremendous opportunities. But, in those management exercises you always get the best product when you get more diverse opinions and things. And so to really be able to embrace that, I mean, I think all of the diversity, I'm very proud of the diversity we have at Dallas County in our department. And, to really embrace that, because that's how you get different thought. You don't want everyone thinking the same. And so we are so much better. That's what makes America great, I mean, that we have this diversity. It's the melting pot, or, bringing all these different cultures together. And that's where we can just really thrive and to take advantage of that.
And with that, we'll end the panel. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you for everyone joining online. Give a round of applause for our wonderful panelists. And have a wonderful evening.